So this video Condition Soulbeast is going to be quite lengthy. The reason for that is because I do have a love relationship with my Condition Ranger. When I first made the video for that build, it was so much fun to play, and it also has a lot of damage, and it doesn't really cost a lot of money to actually make one Condition Ranger at the time that I was making that video. So given that I make that video and I have been receiving a lot of positive feedback about my Condition Ranger, and over the months, actually it's nearly 2 years now since I first made it. So over the past 2 years, a lot of people have been giving me a lot of good feedback about the Condition Ranger, and I have taken that into account and I absorbed that and how to play and how to improve my play style with the Condition Ranger. So with the new release of Part of 5 expansions, and subsequently the new release of the specialization for the Ranger, the Soulbeast, it's actually improved how I play my Ranger in regard to the conditions build. So given that fact, I actually divide my Condition Ranger into 2 categories now, not one, and I'll be giving you how to play how I play my Condition Soulbeast. So for the first category, my first setup is I aim to deal as much damage as possible onto a single target enemy. The second setup is what I have to deal damage to multiple enemies while having a decent amount of damage so that I can kill them fast enough. That is my intention. And to further add on to these 2 setups, I also have the ability to provide support to my team members, namely on the fact that the new specializations allows me to have a new mechanic called stance. This new mechanics skill allow me to share my boons to my allies and to myself as well, to myself and to my allies. So that got me to think that the new specialization Soulbeast allowing me to have the versatility so I can swap to respond to certain mechanics. So if I want to support, I swap to the support utilities and specs that I can support my team. If I want to deal maximum amount of damage to a single target, I can do that. If I want to deal the damage to multiple targets, I can also do that as well. So it allows me to have a variety of options that I can use to tackle certain mechanics, certain events, and just randomly exploring the maps and do some other fun stuff. So that is one of the reasons why this video is going to be lengthy, because I want to tackle all of that features of the new Soulbeast. And to be frank, I do love the Condition Soulbeast. I have been using that on along with my other condition builds for the past 3 months ever since the release of the Part of 5, and I still using my Condition Soulbeast in any of my game modes. You name it, PvE, in Fractal of the Mist, I use that one. I use my build. In Race, I use Condition Soulbeast. In World v World, I have recently got back to World v World, and I've been using that one as well. Now, I have not been playing PvP as much as I used to, purely on the fact that I have been preoccupied with PvE raidings and also getting back into World v World, so I have not tested my Condition Soulbeast in PvP. But feel free to try that out and let me know how it goes. But in summaries, I really love how they have done with this class, and in particular by introducing the new way of playing the Rangers, and it's fun. It's really fun. Alright, so that's enough yapping for now, and let's get on to the build itself. Alright, so now let's talk about the Condition Soulbeast specialization. So what I have with me is the Skirmishing, Wilderness Survival, and the Soulbeast. Now, for me, I actually have 2 setups. One that I use for a single target, so ideally in the raid bosses or Fractal of the Mist, and when I do high-end contents, when they have a big boss that require me to focus on to just a single target, then I will use this on my first setup. But when I'm doing meta events or normal events, or actually just do questing in the open world events, in that case, then I will be swapping to my second setup, where I have more AoE spells spells as my disposal so that I can cast on multiple targets and subsequently killing more, multiple targets at the same time. Because my logic is this: the more targets that you kill, the more loot that you can receive, right? And besides, like in the open map events, there's a lot of people around you, so you want to attack as many mobs as possible to be able to get the maximum amount of loot. So that is my setup. So let me repeat that again. Ideally, for my Condition Soulbeast, I actually have two setups. One, the first setup is for me to deal more damage on a single target. The second setup is more for me to deal damage to multiple targets. So let me just show you my first setup. So my first setup, I have Skirmishing, Wilderness Survival, and Soulbeast. And the first attribute is top, bottom, and top. So this one right here, before we move into that one, Condition Soulbeast, you have three main condition damage types. The first one is the bleeding, the second one is the poison, and then the last one is the burning. So, but bleeding is your main condition damage type that you can inflict onto the target enemy. The other two, why, I understand that they are there for you and they are still considered to be the main condition damage type. However, their damage is a little bit less compared to the bleeding, because bleeding, you do have access to a lot of bleeding, trust me on this one, compared to the other two. However, in my personal opinion, like these three are equally good for the Condition Soulbeast. So given that, I will use them all as much as possible, to deal the maximum amount of damage onto the target enemy. The more condition damage type you have, the more damage that you will deal. That is my logic. Alright, so the first one, Sharpening edges. You and your pets have a chance to cause bleeding on critical hits, and as part of your builds, you will have a lot of critical chance, and that subsequently translates to more bleeding stack that you can inflict onto the target enemy. Now the second one is like allowing you to have your bleeding to inflict is more dangerous. So this is common sense, right? Damage is increased by 33%, so I'm not gonna go deep into this one. The last one, I have the quick draw. Now as part of the rotation, you will be swapping your weapons quite a lot. So you'll be swapping from your main set, which is what I have here, the dagger and the torch. I'll be swapping that on, onto my short bow, and then I will swapping back, back and forth, because the two weapon sets, they do allow me to have a lot of damage that I can use to inflict onto my target enemy. And so rotation is actually the key for Condition Soulbeast. In particular, if you want to do a high-end content, you need to be able to master your rotation well so that you can inflict the maximum amount of damage. It does take practice, don't get me wrong, it does take practice, but the more that you play, the more that you can get familiar with your class, and subsequently you can deal a lot of damage as a result. So I highly encourage you to play that. If you pick Condition Soulbeast, be sure to play that on a regular basis, right? Alright, so for the next one, I have the Wilderness Survival. For the Wilderness Survival, I have bottom, top, and bottom. For the first one, Taste for the Danger, allows me to have the expertise increase based on my vitality. So what is exactly is the expertise? Expertise stands for condition durations. So condition duration allows me to have, actually let's use an example. Let's say that I have my mini tiger spirit right here. So let's say I apply one bleeding condition damage onto this mini. So the more that that's what I try to say. The longer that bleeding stay onto this mini, the more damage it would deal over time, and that is allowing you to inflict more bleeding stacks, and subsequently the more it stays over time, all of your bleeding stack that you apply on a single target, the longer it stays, the more damage it would deal over time, and that exactly is my intention. So at the maximum amount of percentage, which is 100%, you will have double that amount, double that amount duration, condition duration that you can apply on a target. Now just a quick note, for those of you who don't know, you cannot get over 100% condition durations. It's capped at 100%, and anything that goes over that is a waste. So be sure to have its maximum at 100%, no more than that and no less than that. That is something that I intend to do for my Condition Ranger, and I'll be showing you how I can achieve that in my equipment section. Aside from that one, vitality increased by 120 points is also good because now you have more health points that you can use at your disposal. Now for this one, ambidex, so it allows me to have increase in condition damage for my torch and for my dagger, and as you can see in here in my first weapon set, I have my dagger and my torch. So obviously the more condition damage I have, the quicker I can kill my target, right? So it's common sense. And aside from that one, I also have to reduce recharge, so allows me to pump more skill onto the target enemy. Now for the last one, Poison Master. After swapping my pet's first attack will inflict poison and my poison damage is increased. So ideally you do have a lot of access to your poison, and as you can see in here you have 5 stacks of poisons, and you also have your trap, which is poison as well. So you do have a lot of poisons as part of your rotations and as part of your condition damage tab, and having Poison Master allowing you to increase your damage for your poison, and that is a good thing, right? Now for the last one, I have the I have the Specialisation Soulbeast. Now for this Soulbeast, I actually have another sub play style aside from my first setup, which is focusing on more single target, and the second one is more focusing into the AoE. In this specialization, I actually have another setup which is falling underneath of providing more support or just focusing on damage, and I will get into that in a second. So for my setup, this setup right here for me to deal the maximum amount of damage, which is having middle, bottom and bottom. So this one right here, using Beast ability provide me with the offensive boons, which is increasing my critical chance and 7% damage, but it also allow me to have quickness. So what exactly is quickness? Quickness allow me to attack faster. So as you can see in here, just a quick demonstration, right? So my attack for my dagger is kind of slow. This is a default, but in my personal opinion, it can be faster. So what I do is I swap to my Soulbeast, which is part of my mechanic, the new mechanic as for the Soulbeast as part of the release of the part of 5. And when I press the F3 button, this one allows me to have the quickness boon. And as you can see in here, I attack so much faster, alright? And without the quickness, I attack much slower. So as you can see in here, the faster that you can attack, the more damage that you would deal onto the enemies and the quicker that you can kill. So it's simple as that. And that's the whole reason why I have this one. Now for the next one, Predator Cunnings. So when you apply poison to a foe, steal some health from them. So this one allows me to have more health points than my target enemies, and the reason for that is because in the last attribute, oppressive superiority, allowing me to have increased damage and condition durations increased by 10% when I'm facing the target enemy that has a lower health than my one. So for example, if you are fighting a raid boss, or if you are fighting the boss in a Fractal of the Mist, that most of the time they will have a significantly more health points compared to you. However, if you have more health than them, then you have an increase in damage and an increase in condition duration, and subsequently it will be to your benefit. And that is the whole reason why whenever I apply my poison, I want to keep on healing myself, because obviously no doubt that I will be taking damages from the boss, and I want to keep on healing myself to keep my health points up so that I can activate this damage increase. And that is what I am intending to do, and that is my logic. Alright, so now that is my first setup. So for me to be able to deal with more damage and also focusing on to a single target enemy. Alright, so now let's talk about the second setup that are allowing me to have more damage attacking multiple enemies. So what I do is I swap my Skirmishing first skill to be my Trapper's expertise, and I swap this skill right here. Actually I prefer to keep it that way, because sometimes I prefer to keep on swapping my weapons on a regular basis. initially, let's just give you a little bit of a history. Like a long time ago, when I first make my Condition Ranger video build, I actually prefer to use this one right here, Light on Your Feet. So whenever I dodge, my short bow skills would pierce the target and gain recharge reductions, and their attacks from behind or flanking improve. Whenever I dodge, my condition damage lasts longer and my damage also increase. But over the time, I actually found that I prefer to swap my weapons more often, purely on the fact that in my weapons I actually have the sigil of geomancy, allow me to have the ability to inflict the bleeding in the AoE in a small radius to the enemies around me. And given the fact that I actually dive my Condition Soulbeast into a group of enemies to drop the trap and also to drop my torch, so given that reason, I actually found myself to be swapping my weapons more compared to dodging. And so given that reasons, I actually prefer to use a quick draw rather than my light this attribute Light on My Feet. So it's entirely up to you. You can use this one, Light on Your Feet, or you can use a withdraw. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just giving you an options on how I play. Alright, cool. So also if I want to provide support to my allies, I can also swap to this one as well. So increase the precision of my nearby allies, so that allowing them to have precisions. And a lot of build out there will require to have an additional critical chance so that they can inflict more damage onto the enemies. And precisions, 150 points in precision will increase a significant amount for their critical chance. And that's something that I encourage you to swap to if you want to provide additional support to your team members. Alright, so let's swap back to this one. Now this one I'm still keeping the same, nothing changed except for the utility. So for the utility, I actually swap more into traps. So this is a setup that I use, and I also use this one as well, Healing Sprint, which allow me to place a trap that granted regeneration and cure condition damage on my allies. So whenever I swap to trap, I actually prefer to provide more support to my allies, and subsequently, as a result, I don't actually find myself using this one that often. I actually prefer to use this. And for the last one, this is what I meant earlier when I say I want to provide more support to my allies, is that sometimes I prefer to swap to this one right here, Leader of the Pack. So what exactly is this one? This one allows me to have the stance, and this stance increase the duration of myself and also grant the effect to my nearby allies for a reduced durations. So what exactly does mean? So as you can see in here that I have the One Wolf Pact as my elite spell. So this one, whenever I successfully attack, will trigger a second strike when I'm in the stance. And so having this one, I can share it to my allies, and subsequently they can deal so much more damage. And that is exactly my intention, because I want to support my team and I want to give them more advantage. So that is my playstyle when I swap to my traps to provide more support to my allies. To further add on to that one, occasionally I prefer to swap my spy trap to having this one right here, Griffin Stance. Why am I using Griffin Stance? Is because Griffin allow you to have additional endurance regenerations, and endurance is in line with the dodge. So when you dodge, you can apply that, and that will instantly recharge your endurance. And if you can apply this to your allies, they will have an increase in endurance in regeneration. So in some circumstance, I actually prefer to use it to provide endurance support to my allies so that they can dodge more and survive more in the battlefield. So let me just summarize on my second setup, which is more toward providing support and also to deal more AoE damage with in a certain events or certain mechanics. So actually, let me just quickly touch on to the utility that I use. So I play a trap in here, I play a trap on another location. So actually I can deal an AoE damage onto this location and onto that locations, and I also can get myself onto another location and then drop my torch skill 5, allowing me to deal more damage onto that side. So that exactly is my intention. So my second setup is more towarding dealing multiple damage to multiple enemies at the same time, and that's exactly what I want to do. You know, kill more. The more I can kill, the more loot I will receive, and subsequently more items for me to sell, and you know, obviously making an income. Nothing wrong with that. So I think I should touch on, like, if you want to maximize your damage, there's nothing wrong with it. If you don't want to support your allies, you can also go for this you know, this setup right here. So you can go for this one, keeping this one, and you know, using this setup. So this setup will allow you to play, you know, having a decent amount of AoE, but also allowing you to deal damage as well to a single target enemies or multiple target enemy. When you swap to this one, be sure that you can shoot your weapon skill 2 of your short bow, because this one combined with this one, you will be applying the poison but also bleeding at the same time. So be sure to make use of that. So that this one right here, allowing you to actually deal more AoE damage if you don't want to support your team members. But in my personal opinion, whenever I play my traps, I will be using this setup right here, just because, you know, I feel like being a part of the team. I feel like, you know, providing support, and also you can have you know, multiple utilities as well, but I will be touching on to the utilities in the next sections when I'm, you know, talking about the weapon skill and other things, and go dive into the mechanics. So that's it. Before I'm moving into the next section, let me just summarize how I play my Condition Ranger against. There are two setups. One is focusing more onto a single target, which is this one right here, bottom. And this build will try, and I have to swap back to my other stance, and this one, and that poison, yep. So this one will be tailored toward more damage and focusing onto a single target. First setup. Second setup, I am aiming toward more AoE damage, which allowing me to use, which forces me to use the trap. And whenever I do that, I prefer to provide support to my allies, and subsequently I am using this one, providing precisions to my allies, and also providing support in the form of stance skill, which is I pick endurance. But I also have the option to use other ones, which is this one, Doyak, provides retaliation and also stability, but also I can provide protection as well. So I have a lot at my disposal. It's just what I have to choose and when to use it. So I will tackle that in the next sections, which is the utilities. And then I will be swapping onto the Flame Trap and Viper's Nest, because these two have a short cooldown, 12 seconds, 16 seconds. And for my elite, I'm using the One Wolf Pact. But if you choose to deal more AoE damage, nothing wrong with that. I'll be using that. For more bleeding, I'll be using that for superiority, and I will be using the Spy Trap. This is my preference. So it's actually not 2 ways of playing. I actually have 3 ways of playing, but I'll be putting the summary down in the descriptions so that you know when to use, and you know what to use and when to use. Alright, so that's it. Let me move on to the utilities and talk about that. So let's just quickly talk about the weapon choice, and then I'll be moving on to the utility, and I'll be talking about the mechanic beast mode for this build. So my weapon choice, the first set is my dagger, and the offhand is the torch. For my secondary weapon set, I am using the short bow. So the whole reason why I swapped to the dagger instead of using the axe is that a part of the new Specialisation Soulbeast, you are required to use the dagger to deal the maximum amount of damage. That doesn't really mean, you know, the axe is a bad weapon choice, but as you can see in here that the axe doesn't have that many condition damage compared to the dagger. Let's just have a look at this. You can deal bleeding, you can deal poison, and on top of that you have a tremendous amount of bleeding stacks and poison that you can deal onto the target enemies. And to further add on to that one, this has a little bit quicker cooldown compared to the axe. And you can see in here it had 10 seconds of cooldown. This one has a 5 seconds of cooldown, so you can keep pumping on. And then to further add onto this one, you also can provide yourself with the ability to have quickness, so you can attack faster with your dagger. And that is the whole reason why I swapped to the dagger. That doesn't really mean the axe is the bad weapon choice, but it's not really suitable if I want to deal a maximum amount of damage. However, I have considered using the axe in my my second build, which is more towards into dropping the traps and deal more AoE damage. But I have found that the trap actually deal a decent amount of damage already, so I actually don't use the axe that much anymore. So in the end I got rid of the axe completely and I just swapped to my dagger. So for my offhand weapon, I'm still using the same the same weapons as I previously used for my Condition Ranger. So for Condition Soulbeast, I'm using the torch, because the torch allow me to burn my enemies, but it also allow me to drop down, as I previously showed you in my specializations. I can drop it down and I would deal an AoE damage. Duration is 8 seconds, and it can pose up to giving 9 stacks of condition damage, burn condition damage. And then you can see in here that I have 10,910 damage. So for my secondary weapon set, I'm still using the same short bow, because a short bow does provide me with a lot of ability to inflict the bleeding, and also it's attack really fast, and it's really good for focusing on a single target. And in particular, if you are ranging from afar, this one is really good as well. So that's the whole reason why I'm having my short bow as my secondary weapon set. Alright, so now let's talk about the utility. So for the utility, I'm using, sorry, this one's supposed to be where is it? This one right here. So the reason why I'm using the We Heal as 1 is because in a meta event and also in the high-end content, if I'm trying to maximize my damage, I want to provide my pet the ability to have boons on itself. And maybe the pet is focusing onto the enemy, it's standing close to the single target or the enemy target, and subsequently if I have a lot of members inside the party attacking at that target at the same time, they can provide boons to my pet. And if I'm ranging from afar, I might not have the same boons. So this attribute, this skill right here, this healing skill right here, allowing me to copy my boon and share to my pet, and the pets can do the same thing for me. So both of us will gain a copy of the boons, and subsequently that will allow me to deal damage to the target enemy. And that's exactly what I want to be. I want to be stronger so that I can kill my enemies faster. Now if I want to provide support to my allies, as I have said earlier, if I want to support my allies I will be supporting them in the form of dropping the healing sprint, which is a trap that allows me to heal, but it also provides the regenerations and also kill conditions on my allies, and that is my intentions. However, if I want to deal the maximum amount of damage, I will be using We Heal as 1. Okay, so now for my utility, I am having a number of options that I can choose. So as I have mentioned to you earlier in regard to my setup, as in the specializations, I have the option to focus more onto the damage, or I can provide support. And I can consider having maximum amount of damage on a single target, or I can deal to multiple targets. So this allows me to have a lot of options for me to choose. So I can say, actually I can, I'm very confident it's very confident for me. I can, sorry, I'm just whistling with my words right here, but I'm confident that the Condition Soulbeast is a versatile class that allowing me to provide support to my allies, but it also provide me with the ability to deal damage effectively onto a single target or onto multiple targets, and that is in the form of my utilities. So let's quickly talk about some of the utility that I use. So I'm using, depending on the setup, like I said earlier, it depends on the setup on my specializations. I'll be swapping, these utilities on a regular basis. So I have a sharpening stone, which is more onto the single target. I have, the Viper's Nest, which I can use on a single target or on multiple targets. The same with a flame trap and the same with a spy trap. If I want to have additional CC skill, I can use the frost trap. So this one can slow the target enemy down. And I can use my spirit. Now my spirit allow me to provide my allies additional buff. So for example, the sun spirit, if you are in the party that has a lot of condition damage classes, then the sun spirit will be a good choice because it allows you to provide burn condition damage. So for example, some of the other classes, let's say the mesmer mirage, doesn't have it does have burn condition damage, but it's not really that main condition damage type for the mirage. Condition Mirage Mesmer relies on bleeding and confusion to deal, damage. It does have burning, but it's considered to be a secondary condition damage type. So having this ability right here, Sun Spirit, allowing the Condition Mesmer, I keep forgetting, like Condition Mesmer doesn't really exist anymore. Condition Mirage. So Condition Mirage will be having burning more frequent, and the same principle apply for Condition Thief. Condition Thief is more tailored toward bleeding and poison, and having this Sun Spirit right here allowing you to provide burn condition damage onto the enemies by sharing it to your thief, and subsequently you can increase the damage, overall damage of the entire team. And that's exactly what I want to do if I want to provide support to my allies. Same thing, protections, and this one is for physical damage. So if you're in the team that has a lot of physical damage classes, so let's say Weaver, Berserker Weaver, Berserker Dragon Hunter, which is a Guardian, and among other classes, then in that case, like the Holosmith, Power Holosmith or Berserker Holosmith, I keep using the term interchangeably. So having this frost spirits allowing them to have increase in bonus damage on every time they hit, so that is really good. Then I also have the ability to have my Doyak stance, which allowing me to provide retaliation and also stability to my allies. Retaliation reflect incoming damage back to its source, and stability provide them with the protection against any knockdown or CC skill that can have an impact onto my allies. So for example, let's say that the boss can cast a stun skill on my allies, and if they are knocked out, they won't be able to have any protection on themselves because they are unable to cast anything and they are unable to do anything. So having the stability will break out their stuns, which I do have the ability to break out the stun as well, and that also negates the knockdown effect, and that will get them back into the battle and also deal damage back or respond back to the event or the mechanics of the boss. So this is really good, and that is why, like I said, I like the versatile aspect of the Condition Soulbeast. Because of this very reason, I have so much utilities that I can use at my disposal, and I can tackle the event more promptly. Now for the next one, I have the Griffin stance, which I have already explained in the specialization sections, providing endurance, and endurance is the ability for you to regenerate your dodge bar. And the next one, which is more stance, gain boons, increase duration of boons, and also provide protection as well. So protection reduce the incoming damage by 33%. So this one is significant, right? And the last one, Vulture stance, this one is what I normally use when I want to deal a maximum amount of damage. The reason for that is because whenever I strike the foe, I inflict poison and also provide me with the ability to have additional might. Might is a boon that allowing me to increase my power damage, which is physical damage, and also condition damage, and it stacks intensively. And at 25 might stacks, I will have a tremendous amount of damage and condition damage at my disposal, so I can use on my enemies. Now for my elite skill. Previously I have been using the three, this one, strength of the pack, and the second one, entangle, and the last one is the spirit of nature. But because I have been playing Condition Soulbeast for a couple of months now, ever since the release of the Path of Fire, I have found that I have been shifting toward more into the one wolf pact instead of the strength of the pact, and I have not used the entangle purely on the fact that I find myself more useful using the one wolf pact, because I can provide support to my allies, but I can deal more damage as a result of this elite right here. So I only swap to the entangle if I want to provide more support. So for example, if I want to immobilize the target enemies or multiple enemies, then I'll be using the entangle. But other than that, I don't really use entangle. And the last one, which is a spirit of nature. Spirit of nature is only useful when I want to revive my enemies. Sorry, not my enemies, my allies. Why would I want to revive my enemies? What am I talking about? Okay, so if I want to revive my allies, then I will be using the spirit of nature so that I can get back into the battle. But be aware that this skill has 120 seconds of cooldown, so it might not be ideal if you are in the short, let's just say that you're not really playing high-end content, you just want to play open map events or anything like that, or doing questing, or maybe you are exploring, etc. So I don't think the spirit of nature would be applicable in that situations. Spirit of nature is more effective when you are doing the high-end contents, when you really need to get your team member back into the battle so that they can respond to the mechanic. So that is just my personal opinion. Feel free to do whatever you like with it. Alright, so that is my utility choice, and now let's talk about the mechanic. So the mechanic of the Condition Soulbeast is actually more in line with the usage of your pet. So let me just quickly talk about my pet choices, and then I will be moving more into the beast mode mechanic as part of the new specialization, the Soulbeast. So my pet, the ranger, has the ability to have additional what do you call it, NPC, or maybe the minions, or whatever you want to, like the pets. Basically it's just having additional ally that you can use to deal damage onto the target enemies. So the pets that I choose for Condition Soulbeast, the first one is my lynx. Why am I using my lynx? The lynx has the ability to inflict bleeding, and as I have said earlier, bleeding is your main condition damage type, and the more bleeding stacks that you can inflict onto the enemies, the more damage that you can deal. So having the lynx, I am using the lynx just purely for that purpose. However, I have also considered using other pets as well. So as you can see in here that I have, I did not collect all of the pets available in the game. Not yet anyway, but I'm working on that one. So other pets that I'm used, so as you can see in here, I don't have the ability to swap. Okay, so let me just swap onto the Warhawk. So this one allowing me to have the bleeding, but it also allowing me to have the CC skill, which in certain mechanics you are forced to use CC skill onto the target enemy, otherwise there will be a there will be a negative effect onto the entire team, mainly because some of the mechanics in the high-end contents require you to deal to break the CC bar. For those of you who don't know CC stands for crowd control, and I will include the link in the description to explain what CC is, so that you can look more into that. So my weapon, my pet choice, I am using the lynx as my first pet, and for my second pet I'm using the Warhawk for me to deal bleeding, but also allowing me to have the additional CC skill as well, so that I can use onto my target enemies. Now I also consider swapping to my tiger. Now I don't usually use my tiger that often, but if I do need to swap to my tiger, then I will be using this skill right here. this one providing me the ability to provide fury onto my allies, but because I'm using stance a lot, so if I really want to provide support you know, in the open map events, or you know, questing or anything like that, then I find myself swapping to this more stance more often. This is more benefits to my team because, you know, it's AoE, and also it allows me to provide more protection at the same time, and it's also providing fury and swiftness and regeneration. So in short, it is more effective compared to having just, you know, my tiger providing just a single boon. This skill right here, more stance, provide me with the ability to provide 4 boons instead of 1. So I find this one is more effective, and that is my personal opinion. Feel free to use whatever you like. So let me swap back to the Warhawk. Okay, so now that I have explained my weapon choice, or I also, you know, if you want to have additional AoE spell, you can swap to your not this one, but where's the other one that I use? Not this one. I'm looking for the Wyvern. Yeah, the Wyvern right here. So what exactly is the skill of the Wyvern? So the Wyvern allow, previously for my Condition Ranger, I used to use the Wyvern a lot, because basically it allows me to deal AoE damage in an area, right? So as you can see in here, it is quite huge. Maximum radius is 300 radius, and it deal burn condition damage. So you do have the option to use the Wyvern if you want to inflict additional AoE skills on top of whatever you have with your traps. So keep that in mind. You know, you can use this or you don't, up to you. I'm just giving you the option. Alright, so let me move back to the Warhawk. So now that I have explained my pet choices, so let's talk about the mechanic. The mechanic of the Condition Soulbeast, allowing you to have the ability to turn into the beast mode. And beast mode, basically when it just like you fuse with your pet. In short, you're using your pet abilities and then you enhance yourself with it. So when you activate, before I'm going to do that, let's just you know, drag the pet management, this one right here, you merge with your pet and you increase your condition damage, and you also increase your precisions. And that is the whole reason why I always prefer to have my links. The reason for that is because my links can deal a tremendous amount of bleeding damage onto my target enemies, and it is strong. Trust me on this, the links is strong, and that is the whole reason why I'm using it. I can't express how many times I have been using my links to deal damage onto the enemies. Trust me, like I just can't explain how many times I use the links. I keep on saying this, but that is the truth. And so let me activate the beast mode. Whenever I activate my beast mode, I do not have the ability to swap my pets, and that is one of the reasons why you have to be very cautious if you want to swap to your pets to provide CC, to inflict CC onto the target enemies, right? You have to be very cautious with that. Alright, so when you merge with your pet, you have additional special skill, which is F3, and this skill right here allowing me to deal additional bleeding, but is also providing me with the ability to have the fury and the quickness as well. And trust me on this one is an AoE skill. So whatever you have, you know, if you are playing with your AoE setup, you have your traps, but you also have the ability to provide you with additional CC skill, additional AoE spell from this one right here, and it providing you with the ability to have fury and quickness as well. So that is really good, and you can target up to 5 target enemies. And so that's something really good. And you also have the ability to inflict the vulnerability as well. Vulnerability condition tab, allowing you to deal additional damage onto the enemy and additional you know, condition damage onto the enemy. So that's really good. All right, so beast mode, in summary, you merge with your pet, and you have access to new special skill, but you do not have the ability to swap your pet. So keep that in mind if you want to swap to your pet to inflict condition what was the word I was looking for, to deal CC onto the enemy, you use CC onto the enemy. So for this one, yeah, you also have the ability to use CC skill onto your skill 2, which is F2. So you have to, what was the thing that I was going to say? You have to know your mechanic and to respond to that mechanic promptly. So this is what I highly advise anybody use any of my builds. So, is that you take my build, you go out there and you do events with it. You try that with, in high-end contents, dungeons, raids, fractal damage, and you name it. You do any events, you play it and use that as many times as you can, so that you know when to use your skill and what to use. So that's my message, and I highly encourage anybody who use any of my builds to go ahead and do it. Alright, so that is all I have to say about the mechanics, and let's move on into the equipment section. So my current setup for my equipments and weapons and trinket is going to be exactly the same with what I have previously used for my Condition Ranger. So you name it, I'm using my Viper's armor, I'm using my Viper's trinket, I'm using my Viper's weapons, and I'm still using the exact same runes and sigils as what I have previously used, purely on the fact that the Condition Soulbeast is an upgrade version of the Condition Ranger. So in terms of the sigils, the rune, the equipment, there's not much change. So let me just summarize from what I have used previously in my Condition Ranger, and then I transferred it to my Condition Soulbeast. Vipers, stats all the way. Equipment, superior rune of Trapper, 2 of them, 2 pieces. Superior rune of Nightmare, 4 pieces. And for my trinket, same setup. Vipers, everything. For my weapons, Vipers, everything. And the superior sigil, I am still using superior sigil of Agony and superior sigil of Geomancy, purely on the fact that I swap my weapons on a regular basis. So there's no reason not to use Geomancy. And besides, I can use Geomancy to inflict a small AoE damage, bleeding damage around me for a small radius. Still useful, and also apply additional bleeding stacks as part of my rotation. Now, if you want to just try out the class, and if you do not have a lot of resources to spend onto the Viper set, and also if you haven't done a lot of dungeons, you probably won't have this superior rune of Nightmare, because the Nightmare rune you can get it from the Twilight Arbor dungeon, and that is, from my memory, that is level 50 story or 45 story or whatever. It's been a very long time. I haven't done dungeons for ages. So have a look at it up onto the Twilight Arbor, and you can see that you need to do that dungeon to be able to get the superior rune of Nightmare. Alternatively, you can also do PvP, or you can also do the what do you call it one, War v War, to actually get the tokens to exchange for the rune. But I highly recommend you to do the dungeon, because the dungeon will give you access. Actually, do the dungeon, because the dungeon will give you access to the armor skins if you're into that, or if you want to learn more about the class and learn more about the dungeons aspect of the game, feel free to do this as well. There's no harm in doing that, and maybe you can learn something new for those of you who are new to the game. Alright, so if you're on the budget, then I highly recommend you to use either Rampagers or Rapid. Rampagers is power, precisions, condition damage, and the Rapid is actually precisions, toughness, condition damage. So one is more tailored to dealing damage, and then the other one is tailored to more having toughness, and toughness provide you with more armor, and subsequently you can survive more in the battlefield. As for the rune, for the budget options, you have a lot of options. For the budget rune, I highly recommend you to go with one of the followings: Superior Rune of Vulture, which is heavily tailored to the burn condition damage. The second one is Superior Rune of the Crate, which allowing you to focusing more into the bleeding. And then the last one is Superior Rune of Ratasam, which is more into the poison. So take your pick. I'm not forcing you to pick any of them, but I have been receiving a lot of reports from my viewers, and also from my guild members as well, and also from my personal friends, is that they have reported to me that they have been using the three of them interchangeably, and they are all equally good. So I can't really recommend you to which one is the best out of the three, because first of all, they are really cheap to obtain. Somewhere between like from 2 silver each rune to up to like 10 silver, so they are not really costing that much, and besides, like, they are very effective and efficient as well. So take your pick. If you want to specialize in the burning condition damage, use the Vulture. If you want to specialize in bleeding, use the Crate. If you want to focus more onto the poison, then in that case use the Ratasam. Pick your pick. And for the superior CQ of for your weapons, again, I have three options for you. One is Agony, which is heavily tailored into the bleeding, Smoldering, which is tailored more into the burn condition damage, and the last one is Venom, which is heavily tailored into your poison. So out of the three, I actually prefer to use Agony and Venom, purely on the fact that the superior CQ of Smoldering is actually costing you about a gold, and I don't think that would be ideal or suitable for any of you who are in the tight budget. So if you are in the really tight budget, I don't recommend the superior CQ of Smoldering. However, it is an option for you to pick, and if you can afford it, by all means feel free to buy it. Otherwise, just go with the superior CQ of Agony and Venom. They are good, So that is all I have to say in regard to my budget choice, and also for my current setup. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any feedback for me, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Aside from that, feel free to share share with me whatever setup that you are currently running, and what are your what are the benefits of running your setup, and etc. What are your experience with running with your Condition Soulbeast. I would love to hear from your point of view. Alright, so I have done what I can for this video, and I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope that is informative, and thank you for watching. I will see you later.